Good evening. Tonight we're going to start with lesson 27 in our fraction unit. I can compare fractions greater than 1 by creating common numerators and denominators. So in the past we have making number lines, we have been breaking down the numbers, finding the wholes. Now we are actually going to find those common denominators, those common units, and then comparing them. So let's get started. We're going to draw a tape diagram. We've done these so many times, and we're going to use the tape diagrams to model the comparison. 2 3/4 is greater than, less than, or equal to 2 7/8. Now notice that the 4 and the 8, let's look at the denominator, and we want to say, how can I get those denominators to be the same? Well, we're going to use a tape diagram to help us out. Okay, so here I have two tape diagrams that represents 3/4. Not 2, 3. I didn't want to have to draw out 2 and another hole for 2. I just wanted to demonstrate the fraction. Here's 3/4. Here's 7/8. So now what I want to do is I want to focus on 3/4, and I want to split this up again into two parts to represent 8s. So now this is cut up into 8 pieces. So what does our fraction look like now? It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So our fraction is 2 6/8. And this one is 2 7/8. So who's the larger fraction? Is 2 7/8 is greater than 2 3/4. Draw a tape diagram to model the comparison. Okay, well, remember I always tell you to always make sure that your fractions are in simplest form. Well, this is a perfect example that you can look at this right away and say, all right, I see 2 6. How can I get 2 6 in simplest form? I can divide the top and the bottom by 2 and end up getting 10, and 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 6 3 times. So these fractions end up becoming equal. But they're asking us for a tape diagram. So we need to create tapes. So I'm not going to create 10 for the wholes, the 10 wholes. I'm just going to just show it for the fraction. So let me get rid of that. 2 6. And I'm going to set up my tape diagram into 2 6, and then I have another one for a third, and we're going to create that same size to represent a third. Okay, well, here are my tapes, and so far 2 6 and 1/3 look like they're pretty much equal just by the size of it. But if I wanted to look at a third right here, and I wanted to split this up into 6, then I need to cut it up into 2 pieces here. So 1. How many do I have now? Well, I cut it up into 6. Once I sliced each part of those thirds into a half, I got 6. And now 2 pieces are cut up. And look up here, 2 6. See how they're equal? Just like when we had to reduce 2 6, we found out that they were equal. And now our tape diagrams are showing that they are equal as well. Our next one is going to be a little bit different, because this one now we're going to focus on an area model. We're going to create area models to make like units. So our denominators are different. It's a 5 and a 3. I see our wholes are the same. So we need to get, the wholes aren't going to help us find out this comparison, who's greater, less than, or equal to. So we need to make the 5 and the 3 into common units, into common denominators. And how we're going to do that is by making an area model. And I'm going to show 3/5, so let's make an area model. And we're going to break this up into fifths. And we're going to shade in 3, because it's 3/5. And then I'm going to create another one to represent 2 thirds. But besides going up and down, we're going to go across to represent 2 thirds, because I'm trying to see how I can get common units. And we are only going to color in 2 of those. Okay? And then now what I'm going to do is since I cut these up here, since I made this into fifths and this into thirds, I am now going to do that over here. I'm going to go down fifths this way. So now it's cut up into fifths, and now I'm going to make this fifths that I cut up over here into thirds. We've done this before to find like units. So now you can see that each one is cut up into 15ths. So now we see that our common denominator is going to be 15. And how much is shaded over here is 9/15. And over here is shaded into 10/15. So who is greater is 2 2/3. So the 2/3 is greater than 3/5. And we use that by creating area models to find the like units. And in this case, the like unit was 15ths. All right, use an area model again to make like units. So we have 2 4/5 is greater than, less than, or equal to 11/4. All right, so what I want to do is I want to kind of take this 11/4 and I want to make that into, to find a whole number. So let's take 11/4 and break that down. So we have 4/4 is a whole plus 4/4, that would give us 8/4, and we do not have enough to make another whole because that would be 12/4. So what we're left with is 3/4. So what we have here is 2 wholes and 3/4. Now we can try to create those area models to represent those 2 fractions. So now we have our wholes are the same. We have 2. So that doesn't help us. So let's focus just on the fraction itself. So let's build and create an area model. In this one we're going to represent fifths. And over here we're going to represent fourths, but I'm going to go a different way. And we're going to shade in for those fifths. We're going to shade in 4, and on the 3 we're going to shade in 3/4. We're going to shade in 3. All right. Now what we have to do is cut them up. Since one got cut up into fifths, we're going to cut that one up into fourths. And since that one was cut up into fourths, we're going to cut this one up into fifths. All right, so now looks like we have a common unit, a common denominator of 20. And our numerator is going to be 16, and over here it's going to be 15. So now we can say 2 16/20 is greater than or less than or equal to 2 15/20. So we could obviously see by these area models and our new common unit, we see that 2 4/5 is greater than 11/4, which is really 2 3/4. Compare the pair of fractions using any strategy now. So you could use a tape diagram, you could use an area model, but let's go back to the ones that we always used to do in the previous lessons quite a while ago. We looked at one of these fractions and tried to get it into a common unit by looking at the other one. This one is into 3/8. It's broken up into 8s, and this is broken up into halves. So what can we do to the half to get it into 8s? Well, let's take a half and multiply the top and the bottom by 4, and we get 4/8. So this one becomes 6 and 4/8. Who is greater? 6 and 4/8 is greater than or less than or equal to 6 and 3/8. It's greater. The next one, I see that the denominator is 6 over here and 12. So let's focus on 5, 6 because the wholes don't help us because they're the same. So let's focus on the fraction. What could we do to 5, 6 that I can get a like unit of 12? Well, I can take 5, 6 and multiply the top and the bottom by 2 because I want it to become 12, and it becomes 10 twelfths. So now this one is 7 10 twelfths. And who is going to be greater? Well, it's very close. It's 7 and 11 twelfths is greater than 7 and 5 6, which is really 7 and 10 twelfths. You don't need my permission to be awesome. You already are. Good luck on the next problems, guys. Okay, use any strategy to compare the pair of fractions, 3 and 6/10 and 3 and 2/5. And want to see your work tomorrow. Continue using any strategy that you guys feel comfortable with and compare 23/4 and 5 and 2/3 and bring in your work tomorrow. And your last one, use any strategy to compare the pair of fractions. 38/9 is greater than, less than, or equal to 4 and 2/12. And I want to see your work tomorrow. If you are trying to be normal, you will never know how amazing you can be. So be your amazing selves every day, and you will shine. Have a good night.